Ike, if I'm far off, let me know. Here's kind of how I see the Steelers draft needs. And again, I think you hit the nail on the head of the Steelers have positioned themselves to draft best available, but where they'll be at 17, 32, and 49, those are really the first three picks that I'm looking at. So cornerback, and it's like, okay, Christian Gonzalez might be off the board. Joey Porter Jr. might be off the board at that point. So in my mock draft, Ike, and I filled one out on Pro Football Network's website, I had the Steelers taking Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois with the 17th pick. And the reason being is if they do draft a corner in that slot, and a lot is going to depend on what happens in the first 16 selections, it's someone who would be able to learn alongside Patrick Peterson, who you now have under contract for 2 years. You can learn from a Minkah Fitzpatrick, two players who have played at an all-pro level as defensive backs in the NFL. So that's where I started with my mock draft, but other areas of need that I saw as well. You could get Kenny Pickett, a bodyguard for the next decade plus. I don't see anything wrong with that, and improving the offensive line. Also, edge rusher depth. You've got TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith. Highsmith is entering a contract season. Do you want to position yourself to where if Alex Highsmith demands a premium next offseason, you've got to think, do you want to franchise tag him? Do you want to try to work out a long-term deal? Or do you want to go with a younger, cheaper, less expensive player, given what his market value will be? One other thing I think the Steelers need, Ike, and I think Allen Robinson helps solve some of this. But when we talked to Craig Wolfley earlier this year, the Steelers color commentator on the radio broadcast, it's the splash plays. How can we have an explosive offense in the 2023 season and beyond with Kenny Pickett and company? Those 20-plus yard plays. Are there playmakers available, whether it's a receiver, a tight end, another running back that you can get into the mix that can help the explosive plays on offense? I think upgrading your offensive line will go a long way in doing that. But those, to me, are what draft needs that the Steelers have that I've identified, at least from my two eyes.
Since you were talking about cornerbacks, the three guys you named, Gonzalez, Porter Jr., and Witherspoon, not in that order, but, I think Devon going to be gone. And really, when it comes down to the draft, you know how it was last year. Two corners came off the board real early in the top 5, and it just was a domino effect. So that could possibly happen in the first round again this year. You get you a few corners, really any position. Whatever position have two back-to-back, or one after one another, man, that's usually the domino effect. Everybody gets scared, and they just start picking them out, regardless on where they was at on their draft board. So time will tell with that. But the three guys you just named are high value guys when it comes down to that position, and possibly going in the first round. So time will tell. But we saw it last year. Usually it's quarterbacks usually get off the board fast, but last year it was pretty much out of the top 10. There was a lot more defensive guys than offensive guys. And heck, it was about in the top 15, there was about 3 corners that flew off the board last year. So now people are starting to see the value of corners because this game has been so spread now, and they're lining up with 3 receivers on the field rather than 2. They taking a tight end off and putting a slot receiver in there more and more each formation, more and more each down. So guess what you need? And your third corner, your first and your second corner got to be real good corners. Your first corner got to be a dog. Your second corner got to be Robin. Your third corner got to be the cousin of Robin who can hold his own. So that's just what it is. That's just what the generation is going to. That's just what the NFL is going to. They're lining 3 receivers on the field, and they say, man, we're gonna pick on the weakest cornerback. And that's exactly what they're doing. So the value of cornerbacks nowadays, Mark, is getting real high.
Yes. I think you could say the same thing about the offensive tackles in this draft too. And let me backsell again. When we talked to Lee Steinberg, he was talking about the drop-off of a team's starting left tackle compared to the backup. So you obviously want a stud, but there's a huge drop-off if there's an injury to your starting left tackle to then either move over your starting right tackle to the other side or go to the backup. And so I think the same thing could happen with Peter Skoronski out of Northwestern, Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State, Darnell Wright, Tennessee, Anton Harrison, Oklahoma, Broderick Jones, Georgia. I mean, there's several others. But I think that domino effect that you mentioned with the corners could also potentially happen with offensive tackles here in the first round come Thursday.
So, Mark, I'm not going to disagree with you on that one, but what I will say, Mark, is on the back side. You always got to have a foundation when it comes down to left tackle. But usually you can always put a tight end, or you can put the running back if you're gonna go in the shotgun formation to have him chip to help the left tackle. Nowadays, and this is just my personal opinion, your right tackle got to be just as good as your left tackle, because now the TJ Watts now are lining up on the left side, which is the right side for the opposing team's offense. So when you do that, you got to have a dog on the right side, because usually your quarterbacks are right-handed, and when they see something just coming down the pipeline every time, it's not a good feel. So nowadays, I think the tables have turned, and I will always say this position, the left tackle and the right tackle position, should be valued high. But I think now more than ever, guys and teams are starting to understand it, man. My right tackle got to be just as good as my left tackle, because nowadays they're putting their best pass rusher, edge rusher on the left side, which is the right side of the formation of an offense. So you got to be solid at two tackles. It can't be, look, we just gonna take the blind side out of them. Nah, nowadays, man, these defensive coordinators, they doing games, they doing twists, and your right tackle got to be just as good as your left.
Ike, and the Steelers certainly do that with TJ Watt. I'm going to be very cognizant when I'm watching football in 2023, when we're talking about the best edge rushers in the game, Micah Parsons, the Bosa brothers. I know Myles Garrett lines up over left tackles, but to see where the best edge rushers in the league line up, and sometimes teams will move them around.
Minka for a lot, when he rush, he lines up. Not Minka. Yeah, Micah Parsons, when he lines up, he lines up on the left side, which is the right side. He do a lot of damage. I mean, he gonna do a lot of damage anywhere he go on that defense. But for the most part, if you just look at the percentages, he lines up on the left side of that defense when he wants to rush.
That's 12 years of NFL experience right there, where you're watching at a deeper level than what you might see on a TV broadcast. So Ike, let me rip through the rest of my mock draft and we'll get you out of here, because I know you've got scouting meetings. So with the 32nd pick, going to upgrade the defensive line, build the interior and the foundation, the front seven. I'm going to go with Bryan Breese out of Clemson, get some more depth for Cam Heyward, Larry Ogunjobi and company up front. If he's there at 32, I'd love to see that, because I love Cameron Heyward, Ike, but let's keep him fresh at the age of 34. Let's keep Larry Ogunjobi, who was playing hurt last season, still playing at a very high level. Let's keep those guys fresh and help build the foundation for the next 5 to 10 years up front.
Yeah, that's a good thing about having young guys. When you have a young guy, especially at that nose tackle position, you got a guy a big body guy. We call them dump truck guys. You got a dump truck body kind of guy who can move and hold a point. Man, when you got Larry and when you got Cam just sitting on the outside, them two guys, they're able to do whatever they need to do. And we talking about a future Hall of Famer in Cam as soon as he hang up the cleat. So Cam gonna be Cam, and what I mean by that, he's probably the most underrated defensive lineman in the game from a fan perspective. But if you ask anybody who played football against him, they say he's hell. And that's the reason why he's going to the Hall of Fame, and he can play any position on that defensive line. You give him some help, like you said, even though he's 33, he's just as successful as anybody younger than him or older than him. Consistent. That's just Cam. That's the way his body is. That's the way he moves. That's the way he works. So Coach T do a good job of, making sure Cam is fresh. What people don't understand about Cam is his football IQ. He got a high football IQ. So the moves that he make, the plays that he make, it's because he already know what you're trying to do to him. So, but you get him a young, fresh body, take a lot of the load off of him. You can only imagine the year Cam would have if he have a fresh body sitting in that middle when it comes down to that defense, Mark.
Someone who could learn from an established veteran who's played at the highest level too as well. Ike, let me give you the rest of my picks really quickly. And if you want to hop in at any point, Ike, feel free. Pick 49, I've got the Steelers picking an offensive tackle in Dawand Jones out of Ohio State. We'll get Kenny Pickett, a bodyguard. We'll get the Steelers an offensive lineman. Steelers haven't picked an offensive lineman in the first or the second round since 2012, and David DeCastro. We know how it worked out with DeCastro. We know how it worked out with Pouncey up front, paving the way in the 2010s, Ike up front. So round 3, I've got Gervon Dexter out of Florida, defensive lineman. Round 4, I picked an edge rusher, Nick Hampton out of Appalachian State. Again, get some edge rushing depth. I think that is something the Steelers will address in the draft, considering you've got a premium in TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith, but there's not a ton of depth behind both of those players. And you need to position yourself to where if Alex Highsmith demands a premium and top dollar next offseason, you'll be in a decent position to make sure that you're okay up front. Got Malik Cunningham, the quarterback out of Louisville in the 7th round. I think the Steelers could also look to the XFL for a quarterback. They'll need a third stringer because Mason Rudolph remains a free agent. You've got Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky under contract. And then I picked a tight end, Josh Whyle out of Cincinnati with the last 7th round pick that the Steelers have. I know that they have Connor Heyward as well, but you've got Pat Freiermuth, you got Zach Gentry, who they just re-signed. Connor Heyward, I think they could use not just at the tight end position, but in the backfield almost as like a fullback as well. So those were my picks for the Steelers. You can roast them if you want to, but also keep in mind, there's a lot of players where it's like, yeah, but what if the Steelers took this guy? And it's like, look, a lot of times there's going to be other teams that pick the players that you really want before the Steelers pick at 17, 32, 49, and so forth.
Yeah, so getting back to your 3rd round pick, just as an offensive lineman, Mark, you can never not have enough offensive linemen. We don't even have to go too far. Just look at what the Philadelphia Eagles did with their offensive line. Look how far they went with Jalen Hurts. Shout out Jalen Hurts for getting his $255 on his new contract. So and I'm talking M's, I'm sorry, I ain't talking about dollars or 200,000. I'm talking about $255 million. So what you look at what the Philadelphia Eagles did, they did exactly what we used to do back in the day. Draft offensive lineman 1st or 2nd round. Alan Faneca, we called him Red, Hall of Fame. Pouncey is going to be in the Hall of Fame. The Castro cut it short, but at the same time, that was his decision. A multiple Pro Bowler offensive lineman. So I can just go down the line of offensive linemen. We had Marvell Smith coming from the West Coast, Kendall Simmons coming from Auburn. So we had a lot. I didn't play with a lot of offensive linemen. Willie Colon. I didn't play with a lot of offensive linemen who were just pit bulls at the front. So it just, when I saw the Philadelphia Eagles and the moves they made to help Jalen Hurts, they had the best offensive line in the game, Mark. So when you look at that, that's exactly the recipe that I think the Pittsburgh Steelers might want to get back to when it comes down to having bodyguards for Kenny Pickett, as you would say.
I'm very excited to where I hope we're talking a week from now and we'll say, I can't believe this player fell to the Steelers. A lot like a year ago, we were saying the same thing with Kenny Pickett. That is my hope come Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're doing. Getting back to your other position, edge rusher, Pittsburgh historically, it always comes down to finding the edge rusher.
Yeah.
Finding a nugget or a gem or a guy who has become a guy like Alex Highsmith. I don't think people in their right mind other than Pittsburgh saw what Alex Highsmith was going to do until now. Alex led the league in TFLs. He almost led the league in sacks if he didn't get hurt a few games. And really, when you want to talk about TJ Watt getting hurt, I don't think nobody ever expected Alex Highsmith to step his game up like that. But he saw that as a major opportunity. Now he's putting himself in a good position to get some cheese. So when it comes down to that edge rush, that outside linebacker position, in my mind, since the 70s, nobody has found better linebackers than the Pittsburgh Steelers to do that.